Jason stood in the crowded hallway of Maplewood High, feeling the weight of his oversized glasses pulled down on his nose. They were thick, the kind that made his eyes look too big and his face a little awkward. He adjusted them as he passed lockers, making a beeline for his homeroom, hoping to stay unnoticed. As he walked, a group of girls burst into laughter. A flicker of anxiety shot through him. He glanced at them, and the tallest one, Emily, pointed at his face. She exclaimed, giggling with her friends. The laughter was like shards of glass cutting into him. He looked away quickly, anger and embarrassment swelling in his chest. Sitting down at his desk, he tried to focus on the teacher's voice, but thoughts of those girls haunted him. Was he destined to be the laughingstock of the school? It felt like cruel fate had chosen him as its target. His heart raced as he replayed the moment in his head. Some days the laughter felt like a storm cloud hanging over him, but on others he found a little light. He loved sketching. He would sit in the corner of the art room during lunch, drawing imaginary worlds where he felt free, where the laughter didn't sting. His sketches became an escape hatch from the daily grind of teasing. Months passed and winter shifted into spring. One afternoon, while drawing a dragon wrapped around a castle, he heard footsteps behind him. It was Emily, the girl who had laughed at him. She had a warm smile that he had never really noticed before. The light behind her glinted, and for a moment he felt a flicker of hope. She asked casually, leaning over to look at his sketch. He felt his heart race again, but not in a bad way. Perhaps she wasn't here to tease him. Maybe this was a chance to show her the person he truly was, not just the boy in glasses. "It's a dragon," he said, his voice wavering slightly. He looked up, meeting her gaze. She didn't laugh. Instead, her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "It's amazing." Before he could respond, she reached out and flipped through his sketchbook. Each page turned brought a little relief, a little confidence. She seemed genuinely interested in what he created. "Should think about entering the art contest coming up," she suggested. He was shocked. Did she really mean that? He had always dreamed of sharing his art, but never thought someone like Emily would believe in him. The conversation felt like a breath of fresh air, dissolving some of the anxiety he held onto so tightly. The art contest would take place at the community center, and Jason decided to enter. Over the next few weeks, he poured his heart into a piece more than he ever had before. It was a stormy ocean scene, a ship battling the waves, a reflection of how he felt inside. Each brushstroke was a release, each color a small victory. There was something magical about bringing his feelings to life on the canvas. As the day of the contest approached, nerves crept back in. Standing next to other artists felt intimidating. What if they laughed at him? What if Emily changed her mind? After all, what did she know about art? When the day finally arrived, the community center buzzed with excitement. People slowly filed in, and Jason felt small in the midst of the crowd. There were adults and kids alike, showcasing impressive works, paintings that made his ocean scene feel like a mere drop in the ocean. But he had come this far, retreating wasn't an option. Just as he was about to give in to fear, Emily appeared beside him. "Hey, I'm so glad you came," she beamed. It was strange to see her here, especially after the way she had laughed at him last fall. Jason nodded, unsure of what to say. He scanned the room, feeling out of place and suddenly very aware of his glasses again. Yet instead of being consumed by anxiety, he felt something lighter, like the storm inside him was calming. Finally, the judges started walking around to look at the artworks. Jason's heart raced as they approached. They paused in front of his piece, lips moving as they whispered to each other. She whispered excitedly. Jason couldn't believe it, but before he could appreciate the moment, he heard a familiar voice from behind. What a sad piece. It was a voice he had hoped to forget. There stood Nick, the school bully, next to his friends. They all snickered at Jason's hard work. The laughter cut deep, the familiar sting burning through him. Nick continued, smirking. The laughter of his classmates echoed in his ears. Jason felt the familiar knot of shame rise, almost choking him. How was it that someone could make him feel so small, so worthless, even at this moment that felt so significant? But then something inside him shifted. He remembered the months of dedicating countless hours to his art, pouring his feelings onto the canvas, creating something meaningful to him. This piece wasn't just waves, it was a reflection of his own struggle. He wasn't going to let Nick take that from him. Actually, Jason spoke louder than he intended, surprising even himself. It's about fighting through a storm. The words flowed from somewhere deep inside him, a surge of confidence sparked by his own truth. For a moment there was silence. He glanced at Emily, who looked impressed. Nick opened his mouth to mock him again, but paused as if his words had caught him off guard. Suddenly one of the judges chimed in. "That's an interesting perspective. Art is about personal struggle, isn't it?" The judge smiled at Jason, and in that moment he felt a rush of pride bubbling up inside him. Something powerful shifted. He was no longer the boy hiding behind his glasses. As the contest continued, Jason found himself laughing and chatting with Emily. They walked together, sharing their thoughts on the artwork. It felt good, almost like a friendship was budding. Finally understood that the laughter he had once dreaded wasn't all about cruelty. Sometimes it could be an invitation to connect, to meet somewhere in the middle. As the day wore on, the time drew near for the winners to be announced. Jason stood with Emily, biting his nails nervously. "I really believe you're going to win," she said softly. Jason smiled at her, grateful for the support, but yet deep down he struggled to believe it could really happen. When the judges finally took the stage, the audience hushed. The first prize was announced. It took a moment for it to sink in, but it was Jason's name that filled the air. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. There was applause, and he felt Emily squeeze his arm. He stood there, a wave of disbelief washing over him. Had they really just called his name? He walked to the front, feeling all the eyes on him. The weight of the crowd was heavy, but unlike before, it didn't suffocate him. As he accepted the award, the weight on his heart lifted. He turned to nod toward Emily, who cheered loudly. The cheers of his classmates sounded different now, filled with admiration rather than scorn. When it was done, Jason felt alive. That day transformed him. No longer just the boy with awkward glasses, he had become someone unrecognizable, someone he could finally respect. He learned that laughter could be filled with joy, not just darkness. Returning to his classmates, he found Nick watching from a distance. There was no laughter on his face this time, instead a mixture of surprise and something Jason couldn't quite read. Jason took a deep breath, holding the plaque close. He came through the storm. He felt powerful, and for once he knew that the world was painted in brighter colors. He realized he could shape his own story not through the laughs or stares, but by crafting his own destiny with every stroke of paint, every line drawn. Surrounded by friends, they celebrated together. The sound of laughter filled the air, but this time it felt safe, a melody of encouragement. Boundless possibilities stretched before him, and with Emily by his side, he knew his story was just beginning. The moment Jason walked into the art room, he felt the weight of the world pressing against him. It was a Friday, the kind of day when hope feels fragile. Even amidst the chatter and laughter, he could sense it, the eyes watching, waiting to pounce. The whispers that followed him down the hall like a shadow that never lifted. Then she laughed, Emily. Her voice cut through the hum of the classroom, sharp and clear. She said, her friends giggling along. Jason's heart sank into his stomach. Thick frames, lenses that magnified his eyes, made him look like a cartoon character. The laughter felt like ice water splashing across his skin. He turned away, pretending to focus on his sketchbook, a place where dragons roamed freely and castles soared into the sky. Reality had no place there, but today the laughter persisted, echoed in his mind like a broken record. He'd been the target of teasing for years, but for some reason her laugh stung the most. Still, there was something deeper within him, a flicker of fire he didn't fully understand. Art was his escape, pulled him out of the gray world. As he sat sketching an ancient tree twisting toward the heavens, he found peace. Each stroke of the pencil made the branches come to life. The tree leaned to whisper secrets, a reminder that beauty could exist even in the harshest surroundings. Weeks slipped by, and the vibrant colors of spring began to crawl back into the scenery outside the classroom window. Jason poured more energy into his drawings, transforming his pain into pieces of art meant to share a piece of himself. One afternoon, while waiting for the bell to ring, he decided to enter the city's art contest. He felt an unusual surge of determination. Perhaps this was his chance to show everyone what he could truly create, not just the boy in thick glasses, but an artist with a vision. As the days passed, he worked tirelessly on his piece, a massive landscape painted with stormy skies over turbulent waters, capturing the essence of struggle and triumph. It was unbelievably hard to step out of his shell, to put his heart on the line like that, but the nagging doubt was even harder to silence. Then came the day of the contest. Jason felt the pit in his stomach grow deeper as the sun rose. What if no one cared? What if Emily laughed again? The whispers of possibility were drowned out by fear. At the community center, excitement buzzed through the air like electricity. Artists were putting finishing touches on their masterpieces, while families milled about, admiring the variety of creations. Jason stood in the corner, clutching his painting as though it were an anchor. A voice called from behind him. It was Emily. She was smiling. The sun streamed through the window behind her, and for a moment she looked almost ethereal. She asked, eyeing the covered canvas. Jason hesitated. It's my entry," she pressed, one eyebrow raised with genuine curiosity. Taking a deep breath, he lifted the cover. The gasps around him felt like a wave crashing against rocks. Emily's eyes widened, and for a brief instant, he thought she might appreciate it. She exclaimed, "This is incredible." Jason felt the storm inside him begin to calm. It wasn't just another moment of mockery, there was excitement, a connection. "Thanks," he said, a smile breaking through his nerves. As they chatted, Jason realized he enjoyed being seen, truly seen. The two talked about the inspiration behind his painting. He spoke of the storm representing struggles, the waves embodying hopes crashing against challenges. To his surprise, Emily listened intently, nodding as he shared his story. But just as the conversation flowed, he heard it, the unmistakable voice of Nick, the school bully. He belted out, laughter trailing behind him like debris. "Oh wait, he's just painting nothing." Jason felt the ground shake beneath him. He had started to feel confident, but Nick's mocking jolted him back. The laughter enveloped him, scrunching his heart tight again. He searched Emily's face, hoping for any sign of support. Instead, he found her staring at Nick, a mix of disbelief and anger etching her features. She shot back, "You can't even make a decent drawing." For a split second, Jason's heart raced with an unfamiliar warmth, the feeling of someone standing up for him. He decided not to let Nick's voice dictate his worth. "I'm here to share my story," he said, his own voice surprising him with its strength. The tension hung thick, interrupted only by the sound of applause as more people gathered around to admire the artwork. They began to walk toward Jason, intrigued by the energy he held. He could feel their curiosity, their admiration. Finally, it was time for the awards. Jason felt his heart thumping loudly as the judges walked on stage. Every step echoed with doubt. They began announcing winners, the words washing over him like a wave crashing. Would they skip over his name? Shock hit him like lightning. He stumbled forward, disbelief coursing through his veins. The applause exploded around him, a booming echo that lifted him higher than he ever believed he could soar. The warmth of victory surged through him, washing away the years of pain, lifting the veil of insecurity. As he accepted the plaque, he scanned the crowd. His eyes landed on Emily, beaming with pride. The laughter behind her felt entirely different now, filled with joy and respect. The nagging doubts faded away. The laughter that once stung was now a symphony celebrating a victory. When he turned around, Nick stood off to the side, his expression shifting from mockery to a mix of astonishment and admiration. The crowd surrounding Jason had become a shield against negativity. Later, as the event settled into a memorable concoction of celebration, Emily approached him. She exclaimed, pulling him out of his thoughts. "Thanks," he replied, feeling the warmth of her admiration curling into the corners of his heart like a soft hug. As they walked away together, something shifted. The laughter from before felt like a distant echo, replaced with the promise of new beginnings. Jason realized he had transformed not only his story, but also the way others perceived him. The signature he had painted on the plaque was more than just his name. It was a declaration of who he had become. Along the path they took, he felt the familiar weight of his glasses, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. Instead, they reminded him of the courage he had found, of the fire that had ignited within him. For the first time in years, he believed in himself and the power of his story. Emily's laughter transformed into a melody of encouragement, one that united them as they shared their dreams and visions for the future. There, in that moment, Jason realized that no matter what life threw at him, he had the strength to rise above the noise beyond the laughter and tears that had once defined him. And it was liberating. Together, with eyes fixed on the horizon and hearts open to the unknown, they stepped forward into a world filled with endless possibilities, ready to paint their own destinies against the vast canvas of life. Jason stood in the middle of the school hallway, his eyes scanning the crowd, hoping to remain invisible. The cacophony of laughter surrounded him like a swarm of bees. Suddenly, he felt a sharp nudge in his side. He turned, and there she was, Emily. Her bright smile was infectious, but today it had a twist of mischief. She exclaimed, her voice carrying over the chime of lockers slamming and friends chatting. His heart sank. Her laughter danced between the clusters of students, echoing off the walls like a cruel melody. Jason adjusted his thick black frames, feeling the familiar twist of anxiety in his stomach. They magnified his brown eyes so much that he could hardly recognize himself in the mirror. He forced a smile, trying to brush off her words the way he'd practiced in front of the bathroom mirror. "Yeah, well, they help me see," he said, attempting to play it off. But deep down, her laughter triggered memories that latched onto his insecurities. She didn't know it, but those frames had become a barrier, a wall between him and the world, shielding him from the pain of being seen. Just last night, he had stayed up late, sketching in his notebook, losing himself in his art. Drawing was his escape, his way of confronting the world in his own terms. He poured his heart into his creations, listening to the whispers of his imagination, weaving dragons and castles onto the pages. Yet here he stood, feeling more like a caricature than an artist. As the school day droned on, he buried himself in his art classes, learning to create magic with every stroke of his brush. But in the back of his mind, Emily's laughter echoed, preventing him from fully enjoying the moment. She was one of those popular kids, effortlessly radiating confidence, and it twisted in his stomach to think she would ever notice him other than to make fun of him. Weeks passed, and the chatter of the upcoming city art contest began to swirl through the school. Jason had always dreamed of participating. It was a chance to be seen, not just his glasses, but his art, the real Jason. The prospect made his heart race with a mix of excitement and fear. What if no one liked his work? What if Emily and her friends laughed again? But as he contemplated entering, he remembered the countless nights spent sketching, the hours lost in vivid colors and wild imagination. Maybe this was his moment. Maybe it was time to let others see him. With a newfound determination, Jason began to work on his painting, a representation of his struggles against a tumultuous sea, a ship battered against waves, yet resilient. Each day after school, he poured himself into the canvas, feeling the pressure of expectation, but also the thrill of creating something raw and real. As he painted, he found comfort in his craft. The swirls of blue mirrored the turbulence he felt inside. When he mixed colors, he felt the colors of his emotions blend into something vibrant, something powerful. The more he painted, the more he discovered himself. This was who he was. The day of the art contest arrived, and with it came a whirlwind of nerves. Jason stood in front of his piece, his heart thrumming loudly in his chest. Would people appreciate it? Would they see beyond his glasses? As artists filled the community center, he sensed their excitement, and his anxiety morphed into something almost exhilarating. Then he spotted her. Emily was there with her friends, chatting and laughing, the laughter once more piercing through the air. Jason's stomach twisted. What if she laughed again? What if she was just there to mock him? As the judges began to walk around, eyes widened in surprise at the various artworks showcased. Jason's piece drew them in, their approving nods making him feel bolder. The moment felt electric. He could almost taste victory, if only it weren't for Emily's laughter that echoed in the back of his mind. Just then his breath caught in his throat as he overheard her. Emily pointed to a piece nearby, surrounded by her friends. Disappointment washed over him like a cold shower, yet as if sensing his despondence, one of the judges approached his canvas, tilting his head thoughtfully. "This has a lot of emotion," the judge said, turning to Jason, his eyes gleaming. And there it was, a glimmer of hope. Jason straightened up, finding steadiness in that small moment of validation. With every click of the clock, anticipation grew. Time stretched as they prepared for the awards, tension swirling in the air like a storm cloud. Jason could barely breathe. The crushing weight of expectation was almost too much to bear. What if he was left standing alone, waiting for applause that never came? The announcer finally moved to the podium, and the first prize goes to... A rush of disbelief washed over him. Did he really hear that? He stepped to the front, each stride a defiant declaration against every moment of mockery he endured. The applause thundered in his ears, a wave of celebration washing over him. This was real. He was being recognized. When the plaque was handed to him, he glanced at the familiar names of previous winners engraved on it. A beautiful surge of pride and disbelief coursed through him. Then he turned, and there was Emily, staring at him now, her jaw dropped and eyes wide. The laughter was gone, her expression was transformed, reflecting awe instead. As he regarded Emily's shocked face, it felt as if he had crossed a bridge from obscurity to recognition. The years of torment melted away like ice under the sun. He felt the warmth of victory embracing him, and he finally understood that glasses, laughter, and even struggles couldn't define him. With the applause still ringing around him, Jason took a deep breath, feeling liberated from the shadows of his past. This moment was for him his triumph. Later that afternoon, Emily approached him. "Hey," she said, her voice softer now, almost unsure. "I didn't mean to laugh, I was just surprised. I never knew you could create something so." A smile spread across Jason's face, but it was tinged with confusion. "Thanks," he replied, realizing how much lighter he felt without the weight of hidden irritation. What happened next surprised him. Emily leaned closer, curiosity glowing in her eyes. "You know, I've always admired your sketches in class." Jason felt warmth bloom in his chest, an unexpected friendship blooming. "I was too scared," he admitted, "but now..." From that moment, a bond began to form. They spoke about art, the passion, the fear, the power it held to reveal the truth. Emily confessed that she often felt pressure to fit in, to be perfect, just like the expectations others had for her. Each word cast away the weight of their past encounters, stitching together a new narrative. In the weeks that followed, they spent time together, sharing sketches, dreams, and aspirations. Emily even began to help Jason with his artwork. It was an unusual friendship, born from a moment of misunderstanding, now blossoming into something beautiful. The moments they shared showed Jason that laughter could also be a connection, a bridge instead of a barrier. As his confidence grew, the ridiculed boy began to fade into a memory, replaced by an artist ready to claim his place in the world. One sunny afternoon, as they painted in the park, Jason found the courage to lean into his dreams. "I want to hold my own exhibition someday," he confessed, a breathless excitement filling his voice. Emily's eyes lit up. "You should, I can help you organize it." Jason felt the warmth of her words wrap around him. A new vision illuminated his path, and he realized that it was never just about the art. It was about being seen, being heard. The two had forged a connection that broke away from the laughter of the past, allowing them to redefine who they were. Finally, when the exhibition day arrived, the nerves returned, but this time they were different, flavored with excitement rather than dread. His piece was showcased alongside others, his signature engraved on the plaque, shimmering in the light. Seeing his work framed beautifully was surreal. As the crowd began to gather, Jason looked for Emily in the sea of faces. Just then, a familiar voice called out from behind. She asked playfully, her eyes glistening with pride and support. Together they stood among friends and strangers alike, each viewing his art with wonder. Laughter filled the air, but this time it was infectious, a celebration of creativity rather than cruelty. And when Jason spotted Emily, she raised a glass in acknowledgement, a salute to the journey they had shared. In that moment, he realized that laughter could be a celebration instead of a weapon, a bridge to understanding and connection. With his heart swelling with gratitude, he understood that behind each laugh there could be an opportunity for friendship and growth. As he stood in the spotlight of his own creation, he knew the boy with glasses was no longer a distant memory. He had carved his story and painted a new legacy, one defined not by ridicule, but by resilience and connection. Jason smiled, looking toward the horizon, ready for whatever came next. His journey was just beginning, and with Emily by his side, the world felt full of limitless possibilities. They were both artists shaping their futures, creating a narrative that transcended the darkness of laughter turned cruel, breathing life into something bright. The voice cut through the noisy cafeteria like a knife, slicing the air and freezing Jason in place. The laughter that followed felt like a swarm of bees, buzzing with the same kind of horrible energy that made his skin crawl. He felt every eye in the room drift toward him. There stood Emily, the girl he had stared at from afar, her smile bright and mischievous. Her friends leaned in, giggling and whispering, while Jason's heart raced as if he were trapped in a runaway car. He adjusted his thick frames, suddenly aware of how large they made his eyes look like a cartoon character. The laughter echoed around him, a cruel reminder of how out of place he often felt. He shot back, attempting to muster whatever courage he could find beneath the humiliation. But his voice was shaky, barely above a whisper, and the laughter only grew louder. He quickly turned away, retreating to his isolated corner where he usually sketched during lunch. It was his sanctuary, a world filled with dragons and castles where he could be whoever he wanted. Today it felt like a cell with the bars closing in. Drawing helped him escape, transform, and most importantly, forget. As he sat there, sketching the outline of a dragon's wing, the laughter faded but kept echoing in his mind. Jason was tired of being the butt of jokes, tired of people seeing the glasses before seeing him. The hurt seeped into his creativity like ink spreading on paper. That evening he stayed up late, putting the finishing touches on his latest piece, determined to unleash his feelings onto the canvas. Each brushstroke was cathartic, a way to confront the emotions that often threatened to drown him. He envisioned stormy skies above a tempestuous sea, capturing the struggle that mirrored his inner battles. But deep down, the shadows of Emily's laughter loomed large. Even at home, alone with his art, he couldn't escape the sting. Did people truly value him only for the laughter he inspired? Would he ever be seen for who he was inside? Weeks rolled by. It felt like a never-ending cycle of anxiety. Spring was in the air, but for Jason, the blossoming flowers looked dull. Rumors of an art contest began buzzing among his classmates, and despite his better judgment, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Perhaps this was his chance, the opportunity to showcase his work beyond the confines of his sketchbook. That week, Jason envisioned a world where he could step into the spotlight, overcoming his fear of ridicule. But doubts crept back in like weeds. What if no one liked his piece? What if Emily laughed at him again? Yet the urge to let people see who he truly was proved stronger than his fear. As the contest day approached, Jason poured every ounce of energy into his painting. His masterpiece became an embodiment of his struggles. He painted every brushstroke with raw emotion, capturing not just a scene but a part of himself, a ship braving the storm. It was the culmination of every bully, every doubt, every moment in which he had felt less than enough. On the day of the contest, the community center buzzed with excitement. Jason arrived early, nerves mounting as he looked around at the other artists. Colors splashed on canvases, a kaleidoscope of imagination. But he also spotted them, Emily and her friends, his stomach twisted. What were they doing here? Would they laugh again? He clenched his fists, focusing on the piece that represented him, trying to drown out the thoughts creeping in about the laughter and teasing. He stood before his painted ship, the waves crashing around it, a representation of perseverance. Each gentle ripple held a message he was fighting against the tide. Time crawled by and then the judges arrived. Their eyes darted over each artwork and Jason held his breath, wishing for a moment he could melt into the background. But then he saw her. Emily stepped closer to his painting, her expression changing from playful to one of genuine curiosity. "Wow," she murmured. His heart stalled in disbelief. Did she truly mean it? Jason finally exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. He hadn't expected her to appreciate it, and it shifted something inside him. Maybe not everyone saw him through the lens of laughter, but just as the moment of connection blossomed, Nick, the school bully, sauntered over, a smug grin plastered on his face. "What's this?" he mocked, laughing with his friends. Jason's heart sank. Nick's laughter spiraled outward, infectious and hurtful. All the hope he felt a moment ago vanished like mist in sunlight. The laughter crashed down around him, weighing on his shoulders like an anchor. Jason clenched his jaw, a fire igniting deep within him. "No more. It's not sad. It's about overcoming obstacles," he snapped back, surprising even himself with the forcefulness in his voice. This was not just paint on canvas. It was his life, his story, and he wouldn't let anyone take that power away from him. For a fleeting second, the laughter ceased. A mix of shock and confusion washed over Nick's face, and in that moment, Jason felt the ground shift under him. The clang of judgment faded behind the sound of applause. Time hopped ahead as the judges began announcing the winners. Jason's heart raced faster with every name they called. And the first prize for this year's art contest goes to... Stunned silence momentarily enveloped him before an eruption of applause erupted from the crowd. He whispered incredulously, the words barely escaping his lips. His feet moved without thinking, propelling him forward to accept the award. The rush of excitement surged through him like fireworks igniting a night sky. As he stood on stage, holding the plaque, a weight lifted. This was real. Looking out at the audience, he caught Emily's eye. Her expression was the farthest thing from mockery. She looked proud, perhaps even a little amazed. Something within Jason shifted permanently. When it was over, he stepped away from the stage and there was Emily again, her face lit up with admiration. "You were incredible," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm contagious. "Thanks," Jason said, still breathing heavy with disbelief. Your story is amazing," she said, her smile unwavering. "You should have shared it sooner." The shadow of laughter that had once taunted him faded into the background, subtly replaced by a connection that felt unexpectedly deep. He stammered, suddenly self-conscious. "Of course," she replied earnestly. Weeks unfolded like petals blooming in spring. Emily and Jason began to spend time together at nights filled with laughter, sharing inspirations and cultivating a budding friendship. He found comfort in her support, a stark contrast to the laughter that had once pierced his heart. With each passing day, Jason discovered new confidence. It seeped into his art, vibrant colors ignited on canvas like a celebration of growth. They collaborated on projects, weaving dreams and blending perspectives. Emily even encouraged him to explore new techniques, helping him push his limits. One sunny afternoon, Jason leaned back from his easel, wiping sweat from his brow. "I've been thinking of holding my own exhibit," he confessed, brushing his fingers over a newly finished painting. Emily's eyes sparkled. "It's amazing, you totally should, you have the talent for it. I feel like it's time to show my work to more people," Jason said, heart thumping louder than ever. Jason's exhibition day arrived with much anticipation. The gallery gleamed, each piece radiant under the soft lights. As friends and strangers mingled, Jason felt a warmth wrap around him. So much had changed since that fateful moment in the cafeteria. He spotted Emily, a glowing presence, swirling among the guests with an air of pride. He approached her and she beamed, lighting up the room even more. She said, squeezing his hand. As people began to gather around his paintings, Jason took a deep breath. This was it. Every struggle, every mean comment, every moment of vulnerability had culminated in this one opportunity. With confidence swelling within him, he opened up and shared his story behind each piece. The mood was different too. This wasn't the laughter that had mocked him. It was bursting with connection, admiration, and even joy. The energy was palpable, a reminder that he was not just accepted, he was celebrated. Then, as if the universe conspired to bring everything full circle, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned, and there was Emily, holding a glass of sparkling cider. She said, raising her glass, her eyes sparkling. "To me," Jason echoed, laughter bubbling between them. They clinked glasses, and for the first time, the laughter rang as a joyous echo of triumph, a celebration of the journey they both traveled. Moments passed, and he looked around the room, absorbing the energy surrounding him. It felt electric. The laughter now belonged to them, a camaraderie born from shared dreams, resilience, and understanding. As midnight edged closer, night turned to dusk, and Jason found himself standing on the balcony, the moonlight casting silvery shadows on his skin. Emily joined him, her breath mingling with the cool night air. She asked quietly, leaning against the railing, her expression thoughtful. "No," Jason replied, staring out over the twinkling lights of the city. "I never thought I'd go from being laughed at to this moment. And that's the power of being seen," she said softly. "You turned your struggles into something beautiful." Finally, he turned to her, a smile stretching across his face, appreciating everything this journey had given him. Emily smiled, a gentle warmth radiating from her. As the night unfolded, laughter surrounded them. It wasn't sharp or cruel anymore. It was a bridge that connected lives and celebrated the triumph of spirit. Jason realized he had transformed, embracing his story, his glasses, and every obstacle he had faced. And as they stood together, staring at the horizon where the night met possibility, he knew his journey had only just begun. Each moment, each laugh, each painting, and yes, each struggle was a treasure woven into the fabric of his life. After all, in this grand tale of resilience, he had finally learned that it's not about how you start, it's about how you rise. The words landed hard in the bustling high school hallway, reverberating like a clap of thunder. Jay felt his heart plummet, each beat thumping painfully in his chest. He turned slowly, the hallway swirling around him. Emily, the girl who held the power to make his heart race and freeze it all at once, stood there, surrounded by her giggling friends. She teased, laughter spilling from her lips like water from a cracked dam. Jay's cheeks flushed deep red as he felt the weight of their gazes, a harsh spotlight on the one feature that had always made him feel different. He adjusted his glasses, the thick frames magnifying his brown eyes, hoping to retreat into the comfort of invisibility. But there was no escaping them. It clung to him like a stubborn shadow. Jay had always been the quiet kid in the corner, too busy doodling dragons and warriors in his notebook to care about popularity. But now, under the scrutiny of their laughter, he felt less like a budding artist and more like a target. The bell rang, releasing a flood of students into the hall, effectively breaking the spell of embarrassment. But Jay couldn't shake the sting of Emily's laughter. He shuffled to class, the hallway suddenly too bright and too loud. The dull throb of humiliation echoed inside him, a reminder that he was different, and that difference made him vulnerable. In art class that day, he poured his emotions into his work. The canvas was a refuge, the only place where the world seemed manageable. With each stroke of his brush, he transformed the chaos in his head into vibrant colors, blues, greens, and a hint of fiery red. He lost himself in painting a swirling galaxy where anything was possible. Here, he didn't have to worry about the laughter or the judgment. He was just Jay, the artist. Days turned into weeks, and the art contest at the end of the month became the focus of his thoughts. He wanted to enter, to finally share something real with the world. It was terrifying but exhilarating. Jay imagined the judges standing before his work, seeing him not as a kid in glasses, but as an artist. But as the contest approached, doubt crept in. Would he be brave enough? Would Emily laugh again? What if he poured his heart into the canvas only to have it ridiculed? Those doubts brushed against him like a cold wind, chilling the warmth of excitement he had felt just a few days before. Then came the moment that changed everything. One afternoon, he was in the art room alone, his brush dancing across the canvas, lost in the rhythm of creation. The door creaked open, and he looked up to find Emily stepping inside. "Hey," she said, her voice softer than he expected. Without thinking, Jay instinctively forgot to be shy. Maybe it was her unexpected sincerity, but he felt a rush of bravery. "It's a galaxy," he said, gesturing at the painting. Emily moved closer, peering at his vivid creation. "Wow, that's incredible." Her eyes sparkled with genuine interest. In that moment, the world outside faded away. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see him. "Thanks," Jay said, his heart racing, but this time it felt good. "Do it," she encouraged, her enthusiasm infectious. "You have the talent, Jay." Those words echoed in his head long after she left. He spent the next nights working on his painting, refining every detail, pouring every ounce of himself into the canvas. The galaxy danced on the surface, alive and vibrant. In those moments, he felt invincible. The day of the contest arrived, and Jay's stomach twisted with a mix of excitement and fear. He couldn't shake the image of Emily's face when she laughed at him, but now there was a flicker of something else: hope. At the community center, he stood beside his painting, nerves writhing within him like a living creature. Artists milled about, chatting excitedly, showcasing their creations. Emily was there, beaming, her eyes searching for him. As the judges started walking around, he held his breath, feeling the weight of their gaze on his canvas. The moment stretched, every second sharpening the tension in his chest. Would they see the heart he had poured into the stars, or would they see a boy in oversized glasses? One judge paused in front of his piece, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "This is remarkable," she said, turning to him with a glint of admiration in her eyes. Jay's heart swelled. This was everything he had hoped for. Just then he felt a presence behind him. It was Nick, the school bully, strolling over, a smug grin on his face. Nick scoffed. The laughter erupted, once again drowning out Jay's hopes. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to shrink back, to disappear behind his canvas. Instead, he faced Nick, a fire igniting in his chest. "It's not about what you think," Jay shot back, surprising himself. In that moment, the laughter died down, replaced by an unexpected silence. The crowd had shifted, and Jay felt something hot and powerful surge within him. Perhaps for the first time, he realized his worth wasn't defined by others. It came from within. As the judges continued their rounds, Jay's voice grew steadier, his passion igniting the conversation around his work. Emily stood nearby, her eyes sparkling with admiration. She had stepped away from her friends, eager to support him. Finally, the moment of truth arrived towards being announced. Pin-drop silence enveloped the room, and Jay held his breath. "And the first prize goes to..." Disbelief washed over him for a moment, as if the world had slowed to a crawl. Applause erupted, the overwhelming sound engulfing him. He moved forward, heart pounding, shoving aside the doubts and insecurities that had plagued him for so long. As he accepted the plaque, he scanned the crowd. When his gaze landed on Emily, her mouth agape, he felt a rush of euphoria wash over him. She was staring at him, as if discovering a new person in the very boy they had once laughed at. Later, as the crowd began to disperse, Emily approached him, her smile radiant. She exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. "Thanks, I can't believe it," Jay said, still buzzing from the adrenaline. It felt surreal to be standing directly opposite the girl whose laughter had once pierced him like glass. "You're an amazing artist, Jay," she continued, her eyes locked onto his. "I'm really proud of you, and I'm sorry for laughing." His heart softened, realizing how much she'd grown in that moment too. "It's okay," he replied. From that day forward, they began to forge a friendship based on mutual respect and support. Emily shared her own artistic ambitions, and slowly they began to collaborate on projects together. They spent late nights painting side by side, laughter replacing the shame that had once shadowed them. One evening, as they painted under the soft glow of fairy lights in Jason's backyard, she looked over at him with a grin. "I can't believe how far you've come." The question caught him off guard, but the idea felt exhilarating, a butterfly of hope fluttering in his chest. Jay hesitated, the old doubts creeping back in. "Absolutely, you have talent. People need to see it," she encouraged. Days turned into weeks as they planned the exhibition. The more they worked together, the more Jay realized his glasses didn't define him. They became a part of his story, but not the entire narrative. Friends began to gather around them, supporting and encouraging them every step of the way. Finally, the day of the exhibition arrived. The gallery buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Jay felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. Would people appreciate his art? Would they see beyond the glasses into the heart behind the brushstrokes? As guests began to flow in, Jay stood nervously by his pieces. The room was warm with energy, and soon people began to engage with his work. The whispers and gasps of admiration filled the air, and Jay began to smile, anticipation building within him. Suddenly, he spotted Emily across the room, her eyes alight with joy. She was chatting with some people, explaining the emotions behind the pieces. She was proud, and it filled him with confidence. As the evening went on, the laughter echoed around them, not sharp or cruel, but warm and inviting. It felt like a celebration, a culmination of everything he had worked for. Jay exchanged conversations with curious visitors, sharing his journey, his dreams, and inviting their questions. In that moment of connection, the past faded away. The laughter that had once haunted him transformed into a bridge that connected souls. He was not just a boy with glasses, he was an artist with a story, and he was living it. And then came the moment he had been waiting for. They gathered for speeches. The gallery owner stepped up to the mic, recognizing individuals who had contributed to the success of the exhibition. A round of applause erupted, and Jay felt the warmth spread through him. As he stepped forward to accept a small token of appreciation, he realized he was no longer the timid boy hiding from laughter. He stood taller now, eyes bright with possibility. As the audience dispersed, Emily appeared beside him, her excitement bubbling over. "You did it, Jay." "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted, gratitude swelling inside him. She smiled, her gaze filled with something deeper, something that felt like friendship intertwined with respect. "You don't need me to remind you how amazing you are." As they stood together amidst the remnants of the evening, laughter and conversation flowing around them, Jay knew this moment was pivotal. He felt liberated, forged by the fires of ridicule, yet reborn into something vibrant and alive. With Emily by his side, he realized he could face whatever came next. The laughter that once stung now accompanied him like a chorus of resilience. Jay had learned to embrace every part of his journey, the laughter, the challenges, and the victories. Standing there beneath the twinkling lights of the gallery, he felt ready. This was just the beginning. The boy with the glasses had stepped into the light, and there was no turning back. Together, he and Emily would continue to draw, paint, and create, carving their stories into the fabric of their lives, bold, bright, and unapologetically real. The words sliced through the noise of the cafeteria like a knife, drawing unwanted attention to Jay. He froze mid-bite, his fork hovering above his plate. A surge of warmth surged into his cheeks as laughter erupted around him. Every table erupted in giggles, and Jay could feel the laughter wrapping around him, tightening like a noose. Emily stood at the center of the storm, her friends giggling beside her. She was the epitome of cool, the one everyone wanted to befriend, the one people fell in line behind. In that instant, Jay felt small, tiny. All he could think about were those thick frames on his face, magnifying his already large eyes and making him look even more awkward than he felt. Okay, he tried to play it cool, forcing a chuckle he didn't feel. "At least I can see what I'm eating," he shot back, attempting to reclaim some dignity. But his voice wavered, and all it earned him was more laughter. Humiliated, he retreated to his usual spot, the far corner of the library where he could lose himself in the pages of fantasy novels. Books were a safe haven, a place where he could forget the world around him. It was better than facing merciless stares and the laughter that seemed to echo in his mind like a haunting melody. Those weeks passed in a blur of quiet isolation. Jay found solace in painting, pouring his heart onto canvas. He wielded his paintbrush like a sword, fighting off the insecurities that clung to him like shadows. But even in his vibrant world of color, Emily's laughter echoed, reminding him of how the world often perceived him, an awkward boy in big glasses. One rainy afternoon, he stumbled upon a flyer for the upcoming city art contest. The words danced on the page, filling him with a flicker of hope. What if he could showcase his work? What if for once people saw him for more than just his glasses? The prospect thrilled him, but doubt quickly crawled back in. What if nobody cared? What if they laughed again? Still, the fire to create burned brighter than the fear. Jay decided to enter the contest, dedicating every spare moment to his painting. He crafted a piece that felt deeply personal, a swirling galaxy where stars battled against dark clouds, symbolizing his internal struggles. As the day of the contest approached, adrenaline surged through him. He wanted to show the world his art, to step out from behind the shadows of laughter and become visible. But with every passing hour, anxiety knotted in his stomach. What if he failed? They arrived, and the community center buzzed with energy. Jay's heart raced as he set up his painting, glancing at the other artists with their seemingly confident smiles. He felt exposed, raw, like a wound laid bare. Conversations swirled around him, and he couldn't help but remember the laughter from months ago. He took a deep breath as the judges entered the room, their eyes sweeping over the crowd. It was time. As they walked around, he tried not to focus too much on the potential of being critiqued. When they paused in front of his work, Jay's heart leaped into his throat. "This is remarkable," one judge remarked, a thoughtful glance sweeping over the galaxy he had painted. Thanks, Jay replied, feeling a rush of warmth. This was different. This felt genuine. He caught a glimpse of Emily across the room. She was there talking with her friends, but her gaze flickered to his painting. For a moment, the world narrowed, and it felt like she could see inside him. Before he could process the moment, Nick, the school bully, swaggered in. "What's this?" he sneered, smiling like he had cracked the greatest joke. Jay felt the laughter build in the crowd again, a weight crushing down on him. "No, it's not sad," Jay said, breaking through the laughter. His voice trembled, but he spoke with a fierceness that surprised even him. It was as if he had finally found the armor he needed. The laughter died down, replaced with a stunned silence. Nick, taken aback, stepped back as if Jay's words had struck him. There was a fleeting moment of vulnerability reflected in Nick's eyes. Perhaps he hadn't expected anyone to fight back. As the judges continued to evaluate the art, Jay felt his confidence lift from the moment he had spoken. He started to realize that standing there didn't need to feel like a battlefield. He had poured his heart into that painting, and that was something to be proud of. When it was time for the awards, the room buzzed with anticipation. Jay's heart felt like a drum, each beat reverberating in his chest. First prize goes to... The shouts of applause filled the air, a wave of sound that crashed around him. Did they really just call his name? He stepped forward, still in disbelief, his mind racing to comprehend the moment. As he accepted the plaque, a warmth spread through him, an achievement born out of his struggles. In the crowd, Jay scanned the faces, and there she was. Emily stood wide-eyed, a smile breaking across her face. He felt a thrill run through him, knowing that while laughter had once isolated him, it could also be a pathway to connection. After the award ceremony, as the crowd began to disperse, Emily approached him, excitement glowing in her eyes. She said, her voice overflowing with joy. "Thanks," he replied, still buzzing from adrenaline and disbelief. "I'm sorry for laughing at you before," she admitted, her tone sincere. "I didn't realize you had such talent." His heart swelled with joy, warmed by her words. "It's okay," he replied. They began to spend time together after the contest, their laughter now carrying a different tone. Emily shared her own dreams, her own fears, and those late-night painting sessions became a territory where both could explore each other's creativity. Spilling paint and laughter filled the air, a new bond blossoming between them. One evening, Emily leaned back and pondered aloud. "What if you held your own exhibition? Everyone deserves to see your work," she encouraged, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Really?" Jay asked, a mix of excitement and disbelief swirling within him. "Absolutely. You've got the talent." As they planned for the exhibition, Jay's confidence began to bloom. He no longer felt overshadowed by his glasses, they were simply a part of him. The laughter that had once stung now felt like background noise, distant and unimportant. Months flew by and the day of the exhibition arrived. The gallery buzzed with energy, walls adorned with his paintings. Each piece told a story filled with emotions, triumphs and struggles, and much like those stories, Jay felt alive. When guests began to trickle in, he stood proudly beside Emily. Laughter echoed in the room, but this time it was warm and inviting. They chatted with admirers who praised his work, their excitement blending with the atmosphere, the energy palpable and electric. Amidst the celebration, a familiar voice broke through. It was Nick. He stood at the entrance, scanning the room, surprise etched across his face. He looked over at Jay, and this time there was no laughter. Instead, a grudging respect flickered in Nick's eyes. "Didn't know you could paint like this," Nick admitted, his voice softer than Jay had ever heard. "Thanks," Jay replied, feeling a sense of closure. Nick had once dragged him down, but now it felt like a reckoning and acknowledgement of growth. As the night progressed, Emily pulled Jay aside, excitement bubbling over. "You did it, look at this." The realization washed over him. He had transformed. Drawing from the depths of his experiences, turning painful moments into something beautiful had proven to be a catalyst for change. Before he could say anything, a sudden commotion drew their attention. A little girl in the crowd pointed at one of Jay's paintings, beaming up at her parents. "Look, Mommy," Jay's heart swelled. It was a validation he hadn't anticipated. His art was more than just paint, it was bridging connections, inspiring others, and resonating with feelings he thought he had to keep hidden. As the night drew to a close, the crowd started to filter out, but Jay and Emily lingered for a moment, soaking in the thrill of the evening. The enchanting atmosphere felt electric after all they had built together. "Tonight was amazing," Jay said, his eyes shining brightly. "It truly was," Emily agreed, her gaze locked on his. "You've come so far, Jay." In that moment, beneath the backdrop of their dreams, he realized that the laughter that once hurt him had transformed, becoming the fuel for his journey. And as the girl who used to laugh at him now stood beside him as a friend, he understood the beauty of growth. With his heart full, Jay took a breath and smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of his story, a glorious tale of persistence, art, and the fearless embrace of who he truly was. The boy with large glasses had emerged, not as a figure of ridicule, but as a beacon of hope and creativity, ready to take on the world. The voice sliced through the lunchtime chatter, sharp and unexpected, turning heads and drawing eyes. Jason felt his heart drop like a rock. There she was, Emily, the girl who sparkled in every room she entered, holding court with her friends, bursts of laughter following her every word. He knew what was coming next. she teased, a smirk dancing on her face. Giggles erupted from her entourage, and for a moment Jason was paralyzed. The laughter felt like tiny daggers piercing through him, leaking into every crack of his fragile confidence. He shifted in his seat, wishing the ground would swallow him whole. His oversized glasses felt like they were magnifying all his insecurities. They made him stand out in a way he desperately wished to avoid. He forced himself to look down at his tray, pushing the half-eaten sandwich away like it was the source of his shame. "Yeah, well, at least I can see the whole world," he muttered, a defense that fizzled out before it reached the air. Another wave of laughter engulfed him. Jason had dealt with this kind of teasing before, but somehow this felt different. Emily wasn't just a classmate, she was the girl everyone admired. When she laughed, it felt like the whole school was laughing with her. For Jason, it reinforced the painful wedge that separated him from his peers. After lunch, he retreated to the art room, a sanctuary filled with the aroma of paint and the warmth of creativity. Here, he could escape the ridicule and express himself through colors and shapes. He pulled out his sketchbook and began to draw, his pencil gliding across the paper, creating galaxies far removed from the cafeteria atmosphere. In his drawings, there were no judgments, only endless possibilities. Days turned into weeks, and the teasing lingered like an unwelcome guest. Art contest was approaching, a chance for students to showcase their work and earn the admiration of their peers. For Jason, it felt like a double-edged sword. He dreamed of sharing his art with the world, yet the thought of Emily's laughter haunted him. What if they laughed again? One rainy afternoon, while doodling in the back of class, he made a decision. He would enter the contest, despite the fear that gripped him. This was his moment to shine, to show that he was more than just a pair of glasses. He decided to create a piece inspired by the beauty of a storm-dark clouds swirling over a vibrant landscape, capturing the intensity of nature and emotion. As he painted in the coming days, those storm clouds became a reflection of his own struggle. Each stroke of the brush felt like an act of defiance against the laughter that had once tried to hold him down. He poured everything into that canvas, believing that if he could just summon the courage to showcase it, perhaps people would see the heart behind the glasses. The day of the contest arrived, and excitement mingled with anxiety thrumming in his chest. A buzz of energy filled the community center as artists hung their pieces. Jay stood by his painting, worried that his nerves might swallow him whole. Other artists seemed so confident, their smiles bright and friendly. He clenched his fists, reminding himself that he deserved to be here. Suddenly, Emily walked in, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with her friends. The room dimmed around him, and all he could focus on was her. She approached some paintings nearby, her eyes darting around. He fought the urge to shield himself, not wanting to be the focus of her laughter again. But just then, the judges began making their rounds. They moved from canvas to canvas, pausing to take in the details, their expressions thoughtful. When they arrived at Jason's piece, he felt his heart pound loudly. "This is stunning," one judge remarked, examining the swirling storm clouds. A spark ignited inside him. Those words were different, they were affirming. He felt his eyes brighten as he opened up about the inspiration behind the painting, the struggles, the triumphs, the fight against the storm inside him. As he spoke, he caught Emily glancing over. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she seemed to soften. Had she seen the real him, or was she still caught in the laughter he had once dreaded? But before he could dwell on that, Nick strutted up, his usual swagger intact. Nick sneered, glancing at Jason's painting. The laughter from Nick's friends erupted again, but this time something shifted inside Jason. He raised his chin, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "It's not sad, it's about fighting through the chaos," he declared, his voice steady. The crowd paused, surprise flickering in their eyes. Even Nick looked momentarily taken aback. For the first time, Jason felt powerful, standing firm against the mockery. Soon after, the judges began announcing the winners, and Jason held his breath. He could hardly believe that this was happening. And the first prize goes to. His heart jumped, applause erupted around him, an unexpected wave crashing over his doubts. Jay moved to the front, disbelief coursing through him. As he accepted the plaque, the warm sense of victory enveloped him like a comforting hug. Scanning the crowd, he noticed Emily standing with her mouth agape, a bright smile cracking across her face. Did she really mean what she said earlier? Did she see him for who he was now, not just the boy behind the glasses? After the ceremony, she rushed over, excitement bubbling from her lips. "You were incredible, Jason. I still can't believe it," he replied, still riding the high of validation. In that moment, he felt a shimmer of hope threading itself through his heart. "I'm so proud of you. Your art is amazing," Emily said, her sincerity glowing brighter than any award. The tension between them melted into something warmer, something real. "Thanks," he said. She nodded, her eyes sparkling. "You should keep sharing your art." The connection sparked between them, and for the first time, Jason didn't feel the weight of his glasses. They were part of his story, but not the whole narrative. In the weeks following the contest, Jason and Emily spent time together. They painted side by side, sharing ideas and sketching out dreams. Each session revealed layers of their personalities, peeling back the laughter that once isolated Jason. He found comfort in her company, and she buoyed his confidence. One evening, while painting under the glow of fairy lights, Emily looked over and said, "Have you thought about holding your own exhibition?" The idea shot through him like lightning, igniting his heart. "Really? Absolutely. Just because you're different doesn't mean you aren't talented," she said, her voice steady. And so they began to plan the exhibition, sketching out ideas and discussing every detail. With each passing moment, the darkness of his past began to lift. Each aspect of the exhibit felt like a new beginning, a new chapter. As the day of the exhibit approached, Jay felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. The gallery promised to be filled with vibrant energy, and he was determined not to let his fear hold him back. If he could emerge victorious from the pain of ridicule, then he could certainly take this step. When the day finally arrived, the gallery buzzed with excitement. Guests mingled, laughter spilling from their lips. Jay stood beside the paintings, watching as people admired his work. There was a sense of wonder filling the air, and for the first time he felt seen not as the boy with glasses, but as an artist with a story to tell. His work resonated, striking chords deep within him and within the guests who embraced it. Just then he spotted Emily, radiant in the midst of it all, her joy contagious. She came over, her eyes sparkling with pride. "This is fantastic, Jason." The warmth in his chest grew. "I can't believe how well it's going," he said, hardly believing the transition from ridicule to celebration. She pointed out, her voice playful, though he felt a flicker of fear brush against him at the mention of his name. As Nick walked into the gallery, Jay braced himself for the judgment that lingered so closely, but Nick's expression was different. He glanced around, taking in the art before landing his gaze on Jay. For the first time, there was no mockery, only surprise and something that resembled respect. "Hey, great exhibit," Nick said, surprising everyone. No laughter, no arrogance, just a simple acknowledgement. "Thanks," Jason replied, the knot in his stomach loosening. There was no malice, it was a moment of acceptance, a bridge built from understanding rather than laughter. As the exhibition continued, Jay reveled in the moment. Laughter and joy filled the room, but it was a laughter that celebrated creativity and connection. They spent the evening enjoying the atmosphere, Jay sharing stories about each piece and where the inspiration came from, allowing people to see the vulnerable side beneath the art. In that moment of camaraderie, Jason realized how much he had transformed. He had stood firm against the laughter that once haunted him, discovering his strength in the process. The boy with the glasses was no longer a target. He was an artist, bold, fierce, and unapologetically himself. As the event began to wind down, Emily turned to him, her expression sincere. "You did it, Jason. You've come so far." "Thanks, Emily," he said, gratitude flooding through him. With the gallery lights dimming, he felt a sense of resolution wash over him. It had been a long journey, but he had embraced every twist and turned the laughter, the struggles, and ultimately the triumph. Through the friendships forged and the battles fought in silence, he discovered the beauty of resilience. The journey was not merely about the glasses he wore or the laughter he faced. It was about the vibrant life he had painted, one filled with hope, dreams, and the courage to be seen. Standing beside Emily, he felt ready to embark on whatever came next. This was only the beginning of his story, a powerful tale crafted from laughter, creativity, and the audacity to take the leap into the unknown. The words cut through the lunchroom chatter like a knife, and everything went quiet for a split second. Jay felt his stomach drop as laughter erupted around him. He looked up to see Emily, the girl everyone crushed on, standing there with a group of her friends. She pointed at him, amusement sparkling in her eyes. His face turned the color of a ripe tomato as he hurriedly pushed his plate away, shoving his fork into his tray with enough force to rattle the plastic. He could feel the heat radiating off him, the laughter surrounding him like a tidal wave. It was not the first time he'd been teased for his thick glasses, but somehow this felt sharper, more cutting. He adjusted the frames, trying to appear nonchalant, but the embarrassment clawed at him. "Wow, nice joke, Emily," he mumbled under his breath, hoping to drown it out. But her laughter resounded, each giggle like a blow to his self-esteem. He wished he could disappear into the wall behind him. Instead, he picked up his tray and made his way toward the door, wanting nothing more than to escape. He asked himself as he stepped out into the hallway, the sound of their giggles still ringing in his ears. He took a deep breath, the weight of humiliation pressing down on him. He'd always been a bit of an outsider, too into art and daydreams to fit in with the athletic crowd. Both his glasses and his shy demeanor labeled him as different. He was the kid always lurking in the background, sketching gods, monsters, and landscapes from his imagination. But today, those differences felt like chains wrapping tighter and tighter around him. Once outside, he made his way to the art room, the only sanctuary he had where he could paint his feelings away. The mingling smells of paint and turpentine hit him like a warm hug as he pushed open the heavy door. Inside, there were colors everywhere, splashes of blue, green, and every other hue imaginable. Here, he could lose himself, transform the moment into something beautiful, something only he could create. He settled into his usual corner, surrounded by brushes, canvases, and a world all his own. Today, he picked up a brush and began working on a piece that had been swirling in his mind for weeks. It was an explosion of colors, a cosmic swirl of a nebular representation of his chaotic emotions. red mingled with deep blue dancing together on the canvas just like the feelings inside him. As he painted, escaping the noise of the cafeteria, the laughter began to fade. The brush brought him peace. Soon the swirling colors began to form something beautiful, something that felt like hope. Each stroke was an act of rebellion against the ridicule he faced. Weeks passed and the teasing didn't stop, but the art contest was approaching a chance for students to showcase their talents. It felt like a magical opportunity, a way to express himself beyond those obnoxious glasses and the laughter they invited. Each day he painted in the art room, pouring his heart into the canvas, hoping for the strength to enter. Every brushstroke felt like a conversation with himself, and as he layered colors on top of each other, he molded the storm he felt brewing inside. As he worked, the laughter that once haunted him transformed into a subtle undertone of determination. He could almost taste the possibility of success, and the idea of sharing his work started to feel less daunting. But just as he found moments of courage, doubt crept in. Would the judges see him or just the boy in glasses? The day of the contest arrived and nerves surged through him like electricity. He stood next to his cosmic nebula, feeling thoroughly vulnerable. Students and community members flooded the room, each with their own piece of art. As they gathered, whispers filled the air. But when he noticed a group of familiar faces, Emily and her crew, his stomach twisted once again. He seemed so carefree while he stood there with a canvas that felt like an extension of himself. He went to the side, trying to breathe deeply, but pride wrestled against fear. Just as the judges approached, Nick walked in and Jay braced himself for the inevitable remarks. "Let's see what we've got," Nick called out, glancing around at the work. "Oh look, it's the kid in glasses." Laughter erupted again, washing over Jason like cold water, but something in Jay snapped. He said, voice shaking but firm. The words flowed out like a dam that had finally burst, the fear he had held tightly to breaking free. The laughter turned into a stunned silence. The judges paused, curiosity piqued. Was this the same Jay who would normally retreat into the background? He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks, but he didn't back down. This painting, it's not about being sad. As he held Nick's gaze, a spark flickered within Jay. Perhaps he could control how this played out. Perhaps he didn't have to allow their laughter to define him anymore. The judges continued, and Jay took another deep breath, stepping back into the crowd. Time crept by, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Finally, the moment came when the winners would be announced. As the grand prize winner was called, Jay's heart raced. And the award for first place goes to. His heart soared. What did they really call his name? It felt unreal as applause washed over him like rain. The weight of ridicule evaporated, replaced by hope and light. He stepped forward, accepting the plaque, and for a moment the crowd blurred. But through the haze, he found Emily. Her eyes were wide, her mouth agape, and he could see something new in her expression: admiration. For the first time, she wasn't laughing. She looked proud. She shouted above the applause, her joy palpable. In that moment, his heart raced, not just from the victory, but from the connection shared between them now. He shouted back, a grin breaking across his face. A strange warmth filled his chest, spreading as he realized this was his moment of redemption. As he stepped away from the crowd to gather his thoughts, Emily approached, her expression transformed. "I didn't know you had it in you," she said, her admiration clear. "Thanks," Jay replied, feeling the weight of her words sink in. As the event began to wind down, they chatted about art and inspiration, laughter now flowing easily between them. It was a lightness Jason hadn't felt in ages, a warmth sparkling in the air. The laughter he had once dreaded had turned into praise, friendship, and connection. In the days that followed, Jason and Emily continued to spend time together, talking about art, life, and everything in between. He no longer felt those sharp jabs of laughter whenever she was around. Instead, they painted side by side, their creativity merging together, and Jay began to open up in ways he hadn't anticipated. One starry night, as they painted in the park under the glimmering sky, Emily smiled at him, her enthusiasm shining brightly. "You should think about holding your own exhibit," she suggested. The idea took root in his mind, sending a thrill coursing through him. Really? He hesitated, but the possibility danced in the air before him, coaxing him forward. Absolutely, she encouraged, that same spark of wonder from earlier igniting in her eyes. With Emily's encouragement, he began to sketch out plans for a small exhibition. The fear and uncertainty that had once buried him felt lighter now. Every day brought new brushstrokes, new ideas, and with them, a burgeoning sense of self-acceptance. But just when he thought things were solidifying, the tide shifted again. One afternoon, as he was working at a coffee shop, he noticed Nick walk in with his usual swagger. Jay's pulse quickened, the decisions he had made seeming shaky for a moment. Nick spotted him. He called out, a smirk plastered on his face, and the laughter that followed hung in the air, thick and suffocating. But this time, instead of retreating into his shell, Jay met Nick's gaze head-on. "Yeah, that's right." The words fell from his mouth with a confidence he didn't fully understand. Nick's expression faltered for a brief moment, confusion flickering across his face. He sneered. Jay could feel the eyes of everyone around him burn into his skin. "Make me," he challenged, the tension lifting his heart to new heights. The laughter subsided, but Nick didn't back down. "You really think you can take me on?" Maybe it was the adrenaline surging through him, or maybe it was the support of Emily, who stood nearby with caution in her eyes, but Jay felt empowered. Yes, I do. The tension with Nick hung like a storm cloud, and something snapped. The laughter that had once felt so sharp now felt almost ridiculous. In that moment he understood he had the power to define his story, to rewrite how he saw himself. Just as tension boiled over, Emily stepped closer, a protective stance radiating from her. "Leave him alone, Nick. He's proven himself already." Jason felt an unexpected swell of gratitude. Her belief in him lifted him higher, but just as Nick opened his mouth to respond, the cafe door swung open and in walked the principal, a serious look on his face. He demanded, eyes narrowing on the gathered crowd. The sudden shift in atmosphere sent shockwaves through the room. Jay's heart raced as he thought about the potential consequences. Would the principal take Nick's side? Would this moment dissolve into yet another scene of embarrassment? As Jay looked around at the faces, all those who had laughed, all those who had stood with him, it became clear that this was a turning point. He felt the spectrum of emotions flood through him, and he was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The laughter and fear that once held him captive had transformed into a crescendo of courage. In that moment, he took a step forward, rising from the shadows, ready to embrace the chaos. Would he choose to stand tall and take control of his story, or would he shrink back, allowing the laughter to define him once more? The weight of the room shifted as all eyes turned to him, holding their breath, waiting for his response. Jason felt the world around him fade, leaving only the intense possibility ahead. This was his moment, his chance to take back everything that had been taken from him. What would happen next? Would he confront the laughter and emerge victorious, or would fear snatch it all away? The tension hung thick in the air, ready to snap like a taut string, just as he finally found his voice to reveal the truth behind the laughter.